then you can minimize it so you don't have to see me the whole time.
All right. Chapter 4. We're on page 45. Hostile armies, more magic, and the spoils of victory. Okay, if we can't get it together, we'll start giving warnings. You don't have permission to talk. Shh. Sancho joined his master, and once more they rode together. To cheer up Sancho, Don Quixote remarked, "Sancho, I am now convinced that yonder castle, or inn, or whatever it may be, is enchanted, and those that we had to deal with there are spirits from another world." Sancho was in no mood to be comforted with philosophical speculations of this kind. He refused to accept them, saying to the contrary, they were men of flesh and blood, like themselves, as he found out to his pain. Okay, what had just happened to Sancho that he's so upset about? Brooklyn?
So he also left Sancho, and he was like, "Are you gonna pay?" And he said, "No." And so all the people like him got like a big blanket and tossed Sancho around.
Very good. Okay, so Don Quixote had stayed at an inn the night before, and he was refusing to pay. So they went to his servant, Sancho, and they said, "Yo, you gotta pay for your master's stay." And Sancho's like, "I don't have any money." So they took it out on poor Sancho instead of Don Quixote. And they began making fun of him, tossing him up and down in the blanket, etc. Yes?
That is not at all fair. It's his master who should have paid. And
Yep.
He stays too. My master's supposed to pay. This isn't my spot. He's just.
No, they didn't care. They didn't care. In their mind, Sancho was part of Don Quixote, so someone had to pay. So Sancho was in no mood to be comforted. He was not happy, reasonably so. But men, or spirits, in view of their many misadventures, he thought it was about time to return home, especially as it was now almost harvest time. Sancho was kind of in a mood to quit. But the knight would not hear of it, and they were still arguing the point when they noticed a cloud of dust rolling towards them on the road. "See that cloud of dust?" said the knight. "It is caused by a great army of many nations." "Well, then there must be two armies," said the squire, "because here on the other side is a similar cloud of dust." Don Quixote turned around, saw such was the case, and declared they were hostile armies about to engage in battle on that vast plain. Not only that, he also began to explain what the quarrel was about, who the leaders on each side were, how they had performed in the past, what banners they carried, and what the devices on their shields meant. He bewildered poor Sancho with such names as the Emperor Alfonso, the King Pentapolin, the brave Marcolo, the giant Microcolimbo, and many other persons. Sancho listened to all this in silence, but with perplexity, as the clouds of dust came nearer. He could catch glimpses of what they held, and at length he said, "Sir, perhaps this may be another case of enchantment." Okay, so Caleb, first of all, on your history packet, Edgar wrote for you what to study for the test. So just so you know that. Now we're on page 46. All that you missed is that Sancho is not happy because of what happened at the inn yesterday with him being tossed up and down in the blanket because his master refused to pay for them. And so they're continuing to march along. They left the inn, and Don Quixote sees this cloud of dust coming up on the road. And he says, "Oh, it's got to be a great army coming to attack us." And Sancho's like, "Well, there's another one, so there must be two armies attacking us." And that's where we are. Okay, so we're on page 46. So Sancho says, "Sir, perhaps this may be another case of enchantment." "What?" replied his master. "Cannot you at least hear the neighing of the war horses, the sound of the trumpets, and the rattling of the drums?" He's like, "Can't you hear that?" Sancho answered, "Why, I mean, I do hear something now," Sancho answered, "but it sounds like the bleating of sheep and the shouting of shepherds." "Your fear, Sancho, prevents you from hearing it right," said Don Quixote. "So, be off to a safe distance away from here, while I go adjust the balance of right and wrong between the two enemies." So, Sancho tried to point out to his master, "You might be imagining things again." And Don Quixote's like, "Hold on, you don't hear that? You don't hear the pounding of the army's drums? You don't hear the shouting of the warriors?" And Sancho's like, "Well, I mean, I hear something, but I hear sheep and shepherds. So, no, I don't hear any army coming." And Don Quixote says, "Oh, you're just afraid. That's why your fear is keeping you from hearing what it actually is." As the knight rode off on his mission, Sancho, seeing more than before, called after him, "Wait, stop, sir! Stop! Come back! Those are only lambs and sheep! Oh, woe to me that I was born! What new madness is this?" But Don Quixote rode on, calling aloud, "Ho! Knights of the valiant Emperor Pentapolin of the Naked Arm, follow me, and see how I avenge you on Alifanfa of Zoprabana." Saying this, he rushed into the cloud of dust and began spearing lambs and sheep all around him. The shepherds, in defense of their flock, began to throw stones with their slings at this strange, furious figure. Just as Don Quixote was calling upon Alifanfaron to meet him in single combat, a large stone caught him on the side with such force that it broke 2 of his ribs and knocked the wind out of him. But on the point of passing out, he remembered his balsam and pulled the flask and took a sip. But as he was doing so, another whizzing stone struck his raised hand, almost broke 2 of his fingers, smashed the flask to pieces, and carried away 3 or 4 of his teeth. He fell from his horse, stunned, and the shepherds, believing they had killed him, whoever he was, gathered their sheep, collected the carcasses of those that had been killed, and moved along as fast as they could. Yes. So, he was attacking a bunch of shepherds. So as he charges at the shepherds and their herd of flock, and he begins stabbing the sheep. Well, the shepherds, their job is to protect the flock of sheep. So when they see this crazy man is attacking their sheep, they begin using slings, and they're hurling stones and rocks at him to get him to go away. They have no idea who it is. They just know he's attacking their sheep. As they're doing so, one of the stone hits his ribs and breaks his ribs, and it hurts him. He's like, "Ah!" Then he remembers that magic balsam he had from yesterday. He pulls it out. He goes to take a sip, and as soon as he raises his hand up to take a sip, a rock hits his hand, breaks his fingers, smashes the flask to pieces, and breaks off some of his teeth. Sorry, almost breaks his fingers. Thank you.
Is this one?
Chapter 7.
7?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because today was...
The 6.
We were doing 8. No, we did 8 today. So yes, so that was 7. That was Michelangelo. Yeah. Okay. Sancho Panza came running to the aid of his master, full of complaints and scolding him. "Didn't I not tell you that they were only sheep, and you had no reason to meddle with them?" "Ah!" exclaimed Don Quixote. "How easily that thief of an enchanter, my mortal enemy Freston, can transform things or make them invisible. He envies the glory I would gain from battle so much that he transformed those armies into flocks." It was the magician again. Seeing the state of his master's mouth, Sancho went back to his donkey to get something from the pouches to clean it with. It was then he discovered, to his sadness, that all of his bags were missing. In fact, the innkeeper had taken them as his payment, though Sancho had not noticed the loss during his hasty exit from the inn. He vowed he would return home, abandoning his master and the wages he was owed, in his hopes of governing an island. So when Sancho goes to the horse to grab bandages to help clean up Don Quixote's wounds, and he realizes the innkeeper had stolen his bags as his form of payment for them staying at the inn that night. Okay? When he realizes that, he's kind of like, "I quit. This is ridiculous." And he promises he's going to go home, forget about the governorship of an island, forget about being paid for his squireship, and just go home and give up this whole knight-errant thing. It was too much. When Don Quixote heard of the loss, meaning heard that Sancho Panza's bags had been stolen, his dismay was nearly as great as his squire's. Now, added to the immediate pangs of hunger, was the added prospect of starvation. But he did the best he could to cheer up his man, and they agreed their only course was to push on and find another inn where they could get food and lodging. And pray to heaven, said Sancho, that there will not be any blanket tossers or spirits or enchanted Moors there. Since they were on the high road, they reasoned they must sooner or later come to an inn. But the way was long, they moved slowly, and night fell as they were still on the road. Suddenly, they saw a great number of moving lights coming in their direction. Presently, they saw these were carried by a vast throng of figures, dressed in white, who carried a black litter in their midst. Look, this is a picture of the litter. Typically, someone is riding on the inside. They're being carried by other people. Sancho immediately hid along the side of the road, but Don Quixote held his ground, determined to confront the spectral crowd. "Ho, knights!" he shouted. "Halt! Whoever you are, tell me what you are carrying right away, for either you are doing evil work, or someone has done evil to you. In either case, I am here to punish or avenge you." One of the white figures in front, mounted on a mule, answered, No, we're in haste. We're in a hurry. For the nearest inn is still a long way off, and we have no time to stop and answer you." "Stand," said Don Quixote, "and treat me with civility. Tell me what I demand, or prepare for battle." As the man tried to push past him, Don Quixote grabbed the bridle of the mule, which immediately caused the mule to rear up on its hind legs, and threw the rider over the horse's rear to the ground. Another man then came forward and began to yell at Don Quixote for his violence. This was more than the knight could bear. He lowered his lance and charged at the crowd. He drove one man to the ground and turned to attack the others. But they, being a cowardly lot, scattered in all directions, looking with their white robes and torches like masqueraders after a carnival. He caused them to kind of run away. Don Quixote returned to the fallen man, threatening him with his lance, demanded that he surrender. "I'm already surrendered enough," the man said, "seeing as my leg is broken and I cannot move. I beg you not to harm me anymore. I am in holy orders." What does that mean? Brooklyn, read that little blurb. Okay, so why were all these men wearing white? Not because they were ghosts, not because they were evil sorcerers, okay? Because they worked for the church. So Don Quixote had just attacked a bunch of priests, basically. Okay? "I and 11 other brothers have come from Baeza to escort that casket, which contains the body of a gentleman we're taking to Segovia, his birthplace, for burial." So, not only had he attacked a bunch of priests, he had attacked a bunch of priests that were carrying a casket for a burial ceremony. Okay? In the effort of trying to be helpful, he has completely destroyed this religious ceremony, which is something he would normally support as a knight. And who killed him?" asked Don Quixote. "God did, by a fever," answered the man. "Oh. Well, then," said Don Quixote in a disappointed tone, "there is nothing for me to set right, then. You must know that I am Don Quixote de la Mancha, and it is my business to go about the world righting wrongs." "Okay, well, then I beg you, your worship," said the man, "right the wrong you've done to me by freeing my leg from under this mule." "Oh, why did you not say so before?" replied Don Quixote. I might have gone on talking to you all night without finding out. He called Sancho to come help him, but the sensible and hungry squire was just then ransacking a pack mule that belonged to the funeral procession. He had made his cloak into a sort of sack and was cramming it full with food. Okay, so I kind of imagine it like this. Don Quixote's like, hey Sancho, come help! And Sancho's in the middle, like he pulled his shirt out and he's like stuffing it full of food. He's like, what, me? You want me to come help you? I'm kind of busy. You know what I'm saying? That's how I imagine it. When he was done and the bundle was tied safely to his own donkey, he finally responded to his master's call. Very soon they had freed the trapped man, mounted him on a mule, and putting a torch in his hand, sent him on to rejoin his companions. So, in essence, who has Sancho Panza just stolen food from? Jacob?
The priest and I think his master maybe?
The church.
Oh.
He has stolen food from a bunch of priests that were on their way to carry someone to a burial. Is that something a knight would do?
Yes.
No! Knights only right wrongs. Has the priest done anything wrong? No! He was serving this family by carrying their casket for burial. Okay? And here Don Quixote comes to ruin everything. Don Quixote wanted to stay to examine the casket, but Sancho persuaded him to leave at once so that they could find a peaceful place to eat the first food they had touched that whole day. They soon came to a secluded valley where they camped on fresh grass and made a hearty meal. But they found no wine among the monks' provisions, which greatly disappointed Sancho, and they did not even have to have water to wash down their food. Noticing how green the grass was, however, they concluded they must be near a spring or a brook, and set out in search of finding it. Soon they heard the sound of falling waters and hurried in its direction. But as they went farther, they also heard other sounds, heavy blows at regular intervals, with the clanging of iron and the rattling of chains. So this constant dunk, 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 dunk. They stopped to listen, but could not understand the noise. The hour was late, and the night was pitch black. They were in the midst of lofty trees whose high leaves made strange whisperings. The place was solitary and mysterious. Filled now with fear, Sancho began trembling. But Don Quixote, mounted on Rocinante, took up his lance and shield and announced that he was going on to explore this haunted glen. He told Sancho to tighten the saddle and then gave him some final instructions. Wait here 3 days, and if at the end of that time I do not return, go home to our village, and then to Toboso. Tell my lady Dulcinea that her knight died attempting impossible deeds just to make himself worthy of her love. Sancho, who was extremely afraid of being left in that diabolical or evil place, cried when his master said these words. He tried to think of some way of diverting his master away from his purpose. He begged him to return to the high road, even if they had to go 3 days without water. But at any rate, there was no reason not to wait until morning to see first where they were. Don Quixote only answered that a knight-errant could not be troubled by darkness or supernatural sounds, nor should it ever be said of him, when dead or alive, that he had ever been turned from his duty by tears. So, frustrated in his attempt, Sancho decided on a more mechanical means. So, was he able to convince Don Quixote to not go and explore this weird thunking sound? No. So he has to come up, but he is so scared to be left by himself that he has to find some other way to get Don Quixote not to go. And he comes up with a plan. Pretending to be busy with the saddle, he quietly tied the hind legs of the animals together, using the reins of his donkey so that when Don Quixote wished to move forward, Rocinante could only manage a series of short jumps. Sancho said this was a clear sign from heaven that the knight was to stay where he was until morning. Okay, let me show you what he did. You know how, like, if this is a horse?
It's a good horse.
Yeah.
Oop, his back leg's really fat. That's okay. Okay. Is it like a dinosaur? Let's add maybe a name. Maybe that helps a little bit.
It's a unicorn.
There you go. This is ears.
Unicorn.
Okay. Here's the horse. Ish. Okay. Here's the horse. You know how horses have their two back legs and two front legs? Okay, so what Sancho Panza did is he tied these two back legs together using the reins of his donkey that was kind of like right behind him. Okay, so the reins from his donkey that he was using, he used these to tie the back legs of the horse together. So Don Quixote had no idea. Okay, so when Don Quixote says, "Giddy up!" and wants his horse to go, his horse can't go anywhere because the legs are tied together. Okay? And Sancho says, "Oh, that must be a sign from the heavens that you're not supposed to go check that out tonight. You're supposed to stay here because look, your horse isn't moving. Must be a sign from the heavens." Yes.
I think when Don Quixote heard this, I think he thought that Preston put a spell on his horse to make sure he can't move anywhere.
Maybe. Caleb?
What the horse
If he kept going, he would try. He would fall. But typically horses move their legs, kind of like two of them move at the same time, one front, one back usually. So I'm sure when I would take the first step and it couldn't move the back one. Alright, go ahead and get out everything you need to pack up and stand behind your chair, please.